Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in the House on what is, in fact, a very sad day for our country. I'm quite surprised to hear, flabbergasted really, to hear members across the way say it's an exciting day. Today is a very sad day with the devastating unemployment numbers that have just come out. Statistics Canada released unemployment numbers for today showing that unemployment in Canada has risen to 7%. This is the highest unemployment that our country has seen outside of the COVID period since 2016. And it's part of a trend that has been chugging along under this Liberal government. We have seen, if you look at unemployment statistics over the last 2 years, this increase particularly in youth unemployment, but in unemployment in general, we are now at 7% unemployment. And many experts expect these numbers actually to continue to get worse. For example, a forecast from TD said 100,000 job losses by the third quarter of this year. And the governor of the Bank of Canada has warned us that businesses, quote, businesses are generally telling us that they plan to scale back hiring. And if you delve a little more into these numbers, you'll see just how painful the situation is for young people. Students looking for summer jobs. 1 in 5 Canadian students are now unemployed. This is extremely high. Young people who are trying to get ahead, trying to pursue opportunities for the future, who are studying post-secondary, are trying to find jobs so that they can sustain themselves and be able to continue their studies. And yet 1 in 5 Canadian students, more than 1 in 5, are unemployed. So this is really a desperate situation for Canadian young people. 7% unemployment, very high rates of unemployment for youth and in particular for students. Now, I noticed unemployment rates are particularly high in various major centres in southern Ontario. Unemployment is at 10.8% in Windsor, 9.1% in Oshawa, 8.8% in Toronto, and 8.4% in Barrie. Toronto's unemployment rate is the highest it's been in over a decade outside of the COVID period. And we've seen various sectors particularly hard hit. 25,000 manufacturing jobs lost in Ontario alone. That's just Ontario manufacturing jobs, 25,000 since a year ago at this time. Canadians are more desperate. They are searching longer for work. The data shows again that while the number of unemployed Canadians is increasing, the average duration of unemployment is also substantially up to over 21 weeks. So more Canadians are unemployed, more young Canadians are unemployed in particular. Canadians are waiting longer, struggling more, and getting more desperate as they try to find jobs. And Madam Speaker, as we were preparing for these numbers, I've been speaking to Canadians who are dealing with unemployment. And in a number of cases, I talked to people who told me that they put in over 1,000 job applications. I talked to one software developer in Vancouver, for example, who told me his story. He's a young man my age, professional, skilled. He had to go abroad for some health care that he needed, that he was struggling to get access to in Canada. So he came back in hopes of finding a job and has been struggling to find one for over a year. And I think we can expect Liberals to try to find excuses for this, as they always do, and they'll try to point to external events that are beyond their control. But it's important to underline that this is the continuation of a long-running trajectory. that, as we've been warning for years, Liberal policies have made it harder and harder for employers to hire people, for Canadians to find work. We've warned about that as these numbers have unfolded, and we've progressed into this unemployment crisis over really the period ever since we came out of COVID. So, Madam Speaker, I hope that today's dire unemployment numbers are a wake-up call to the Liberal government, a wake-up call that their policies are not working and that it's time to change course. The other thing we hear from Liberals in response to bad economic news is a promise to do the same thing even harder, right? They institute bad economic policies that cause a housing crisis, an unemployment crisis, and then they say, well, we're going to do more of the same thing again. We're going to increase taxes more. We're going to expand spending more, and I think what Canadians actually want to see is the government change course, change their direction. As it relates to unemployment, I think we can identify a number of concrete factors that we've been talking about for a long time, that are driving up unemployment in this country. One, and it's very clear, is a lack of private sector job growth. We also had earlier this week numbers come out on labor productivity. Labor productivity is down in the service sector, and we're not seeing the kind of productivity growth across the board that would allow us to address these long-running problems. We are not seeing investment because of barriers that this government has put up, gatekeepers, obstruction, preventing small and large businesses from moving forward with creating jobs for Canadians. This is most evident in the area of major projects, and projects like pipelines that are critical for fueling job growth. Major projects in the natural resource, mining, and other sectors blocked by Liberal Bill C-69 and other legislation that undermines the ability of major projects to move forward. And we've heard a lot of discourse around major projects from the government, but they continue to speak out of both sides of their mouth, saying they'll keep C-69 in place, saying they'll only move forward with major projects if there's consensus. You're never going to get everyone to agree on things getting built, on investments being made. If you wait for complete unanimity, then we're just never going to build anything. And that has implications for jobs and opportunity for Canadians, as we are seeing in today's, again, 7% unemployment number and the jobs crisis that we're seeing across the board. So getting major projects by repealing Bill C-69, reversing course on the obstruction and red tape, is going to be critical for our future. Also, Madam Speaker, small businesses face all kinds of barriers. We've had growing payroll tax increases that make it harder to hire new Canadians, hire new employees. We've seen a tax on small business over the course of this government's time in office, demonizing small business owners as tax cheats. And these actions by the government have all had an impact on this escalating unemployment crisis that we're seeing. So one thing that we need to do as a country to move forward with addressing this employment crisis is to reverse course on these Liberal anti-development, anti-investment policies that have made it so difficult for companies large and small to create jobs and to employ Canadians. Another problem that we're seeing is how cost of living is forcing older workers to stay in the workforce for perhaps longer than they intended. The unemployment crisis is particularly acute for young people. We have continuous growth in the unemployment rate for youth. And as I mentioned, particularly pronounced for students looking for summer jobs. And I think a contributing factor to that, as some experts have said, is that while Liberals had predicted the so-called gray tsunami of people in older generations leaving the workforce, what has happened is that dramatic increases in the cost of living, the price of groceries, these things have hit seniors particularly hard, and they've impacted people's ability to retire on the timeline that they intended. So, cost of living, obstruction of development, these policies that we have been talking about filter into these unemployment numbers where we are seeing this continuous growth. And then, Madam Speaker, there was, of course, immigration. The Liberals have made a mess of our immigration system. And the conversation around this has completely changed. I recall 10 years ago, there was broad consensus among Canadians about levels of immigration that were pursued under the previous government, because there was always an emphasis on understanding what Canada's labour market needs were, on viewing immigration through that lens of what is in Canada's interest, of welcoming people to this country who can fill in skill gaps and who can catalyze job growth for Canadians. And that was the prudent, effective, and also welcoming approach taken by the previous government. And it also included a major emphasis on rule of law, on proper enforcement. Under this Liberal government, numbers have ballooned, and there also has been a complete failure of alignment, a failure to align immigration with our national interest needs, align it with those labour market needs. So there are major problems, and levels need to come down. And there is a broader failure of this government on immigration that is contributing to unemployment. Because, for instance, if you have issues of fraud in the LMIA system, which the Globe and Mail has reported on, that has implications for people who are supposed to be coming in cases where there are not Canadians available to work, but who are actually coming in cases where there are Canadians available to work. So we will continue to hold the government accountable on all of these issues, on getting projects moving forward, on creating an environment in which small businesses can invest and grow, on addressing the cost of living crisis affecting seniors and people of all ages, impacting retirement choices, and on immigration. So we've talked about these policies, we've predicted these problems, and again, we see them in the numbers today. The continuation of a long-running trend that now reaches total unemployment up to 7%. And as I mentioned, there are some regional pockets of very low unemployment, but unemployment is particularly high above the national average in many of our central Canadian major cities. And I know people in Toronto in particular are going to be looking at these numbers with great concern, given that it's the highest numbers we've seen in more than a decade. And I think the path forward is clear, Madam Speaker. We need to remove barriers to work. We need to reduce the tax burden on working Canadians. We need to get government out of the way so that businesses can grow and hire, and this government must fix immigration. These changes to deliver government that works for those who work and that works for students and young people pursuing their dreams, these changes are vitally necessary. Despite talking the talk of change, we continue to see a government that doubles down on the policy failures that have got us to this point. A government that continues to talk out of both sides of its mouth on resource projects. A government that continues to allow extremely high levels of immigration. These are the policy choices made by this government that are not changed, that are more of the same, that are leading to more of the same in terms of unemployment numbers. Now, Madam Speaker, in the context of this overall economic situation, we have Bill C4 before Parliament. Now, this is a piece of legislation which purports to be about affordability measures for Canadians. And when it comes to what the government is talking about in this bill, Conservatives have been very clear that we do not think their proposed measures go nearly far enough in terms of providing Canadians with the tax relief that they need. Of course, Conservatives have for a long time talked about the need to get rid of the carbon tax, the consumer carbon tax and the industrial carbon tax. Liberals have in the most hyperbolic terms, denounced that advocacy for 10 years. They continue to believe in a consumer carbon tax as well as an industrial carbon tax, and they would bring it back and raise it if they were ever anywhere close to having a chance to do that. But they perceived that their political interests were at odds with their deeply held convictions. And so they announced an intention to change course on the consumer carbon tax while leaving in place the industrial carbon tax, effectively leaving in place a structure that would see those costs passed along to consumers. And these failures of the government to fully address the barriers to opportunity and to investment, things like the industrial carbon tax, these decisions of the government deter the kind of investment and job growth that this country needs. It's what they have done and in what they have not done. Leaving in place, continuing to raise taxes on various sectors, on small business, on large business, on companies, and on Canadians. This is what is holding back jobs and opportunity. So we don't need to see more of the same. We need to see a change in course. And hopefully today's job numbers will evoke some humility from the government, that they'll look at these numbers and say, for the Canadians in our ridings who are struggling, perhaps we need to do something different. Perhaps we need to reverse course on these policies that have, in fact, prevented job growth and led to the increases in unemployment that we've seen. And I mentioned, I just want to kind of drill down on one specific point here, is the government, we have seen over the years increases in taxes on businesses in the form of increases in payroll taxes. And at a time when unemployment is rising, the government should not be planning to hike payroll taxes. Payroll taxes are a tax directly on employment. They are a tax on jobs. So when you increase the payroll taxes that individuals and businesses have to pay, this makes it harder for them to choose to hire more Canadians. So as we go further into this unemployment crisis, as we reflect on the numbers that are in the Stats Can report today, we should remind the government of the importance of not further increasing payroll taxes in the year ahead. And I want to very clearly call on the government to not increase payroll taxes in the year ahead. So, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, we have before us Bill C4, a bill that the government says contains affordability measures. But it is being debated on a day where we find just catastrophic news in the space of unemployment. 7% unemployment, a number not seen since 2016 outside of the COVID period. The third consecutive monthly increase in the unemployment rate. Unemployment has been going up steadily for 2 years. Canada has had virtually no employment growth since January. And again, students hit particularly hard. More than 1 in 5 Canadian students are now unemployed. This is the highest rate in decades, excluding the COVID period. And there are some regional pockets of lower unemployment, very high unemployment above the national average in many of our major cities. These unemployment numbers should be a wake-up call for the government about the need to change course and actually allow our economy to move forward.